Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is Pritesh Walia, a jazz guitarist, composer, educator, whose latest album, Hopetown, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Pritesh.
Welcome. Thank you.
Pritesh, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a jazz guitarist.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If I could go back 15 years ago and find this little Indian kid for me and tell him in India that, hey man, in like 15 years or so, you're going to be a jazz guitar player, educator, he'd be like, no way, you know? So it's kind of surreal to find myself in this situation, and it's nice to trace back sometimes. But, well, I grew up in India, you know, and I was raised there, and I was always musically inclined, but never really picked up an instrument till very late in my life. I think at about 15 or 16. And my first way to get into the instrument was I saw this guitar that only had 4 strings in it in my Indian classical classes that I had to take in school. And I was like, well, I don't find myself attracted to any of the other instruments, but this one looks cool, even though it was missing strings. And somehow I picked it up, and I try to figure things out on it. And long story short, I just couldn't find myself diving into the Indian land of music, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. And my kind of influence went towards straight into more Western and rock and roll style of things. Jazz was actually an introduction in my life way later. As a matter of fact, when jazz was introduced to me, more in the academic world, I couldn't really understand what was being thrown at me. So I had to navigate myself within the jazz world and find what I like. So, and then now 15 years later, here we are. You know, I feel like jazz is what I play the most. I feel like that's the most expressive I feel when I play that music, you know. So it's nice to be from a different country and look at jazz as like history and academia, but now it's becoming a part of my culture in life, So it's kind of cool.
Okay, let's listen to another track. This is Staying Home. So, Pritesh, tell us about this new album, Staying Home. I think this is the first one that you've made many albums before this. We consider kind of your guitar trio debut. Tell us about why you decided to make this album.
Um, it was actually I never thought I'm worthy enough to have my own album. But to be honest, a lot of my friends, I wrote all these songs probably in the past 10 years at different times and stages of my life. So my friends were like, "Man, these are really fun to play, and we can sing these, and they're easy tunes that we can kind of pick up and stretch as much as we want, and you should record them." And as a matter of fact, I think some of my friends helped me put it all together. Helped me find the studio, the right engineer, and all of that. I already had a working trio with me, and they kind of put it all together for me. Um, Hopetown actually comes from the name comes from I was taking a small trip between this chaotic time of playing gigging in Boston and gigging in New York, and I had a bus ride in between at like 4 in the morning, and I saw this town from a distance, which looked really beautiful at like 5, 6 in the morning. Looked really simple. Looked like in the life of chaos, that was the only place where I could have been where it would have not been chaotic. So I sang a melody on my phone, and which was actually in the key of E major, and then I put it in G, and that became the song Hopetown. Weirdly, I sang the full song in and out in a small voice note, you know. So that's the title track, but I think every song on the record has a story or something about it. But Hopetown specifically came out of from being in a chaotic world and then having somewhere in the middle of it um, a moment of breath. For me, that was Hopetown. It's something that I fictitiously made a town that I can go to in the chaos of being a musician, especially being a jazz musician, not even from this country, trying to teach, gig, and do juggle 100 things. Um, so that is Hopetown for me.
And is it Pritesh town that you will you aspire to join, or is it a place where you already live, or is it what is exactly? Is it just yours? Is it everyone else's?
It's everyone else's. It's not actually a town or a place. It's inspired by me seeing a town, and seeing the simplicity of it. Me traveling in a bus and then seeing sunrise, and seeing this beautiful town, which I'm unsure what the name was, and I kind of didn't want to know more about it because I liked the what I took from it. It's sometimes it's hard to appreciate something very beautiful around you, and in a life of chaos, most people I feel ignore to do that. Um, Somehow I kind of it caught my eye at 6 in the morning, and I was like, this is so beautiful. This is the place where I want to be, without my cell phone and you know and all the worldly distractions of and being on the jazz grind at constantly. So it's a town that I feel like every musician should go to, in their own head, to get out of the chaos that we all live in. So this is kind of what the record is based on.
Let's listen to another track. This is Finishing Up. Pritesh, now tell us about what you look for in a musician. This is, of course, as you said, it's album of your own music. You're the head person here. You're just on the front cover, but these other musicians, as you keep saying, are really, really important to you. What do you look
Absolutely.
for in a musician? What makes a good musician, and how do you know? Okay, I want to play with those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the bass player here is Chris Worden. Um, and I went to New England Conservatory with him to get my master's when I was in grad school, and to be honest, apart from him being an insanely amazing bass player who can read and play anything, I feel like in our community of jazz musicians, there's no shortage of amazing players out there. But the connection was more about um, being friends before being great players, and we could play a lot of tunes. We were in multiple big bands and bands together, but also our musical tastes inclined were kind of very similar to each other. I like jazz, but at the same time, I also love folk, and at the same time, I also love gospel and many other styles. And if I try to introduce that in my playing, Chris would definitely appreciated that and caught on to that, and sometimes would ask me, and we would have questions about it. So, as much as if I have to think what I look for in a player is, well, of course I feel like everyone is a great player, but is the ability to actually connect as personably with people, and that I could. And I feel the best bands that last the longest are friends first, and have a connection as friends before, because that comes out in your music when you play. And same with the drummer again. As a matter of fact, I ran a jam session in Boston at a place called the Bebop, and they asked me to run this jam session and there are two students, two schools right across the street. One is Berklee College of Music, which is where I went to for my undergrad, and on the other side is New England Conservatory of Music, where I went for my graduate degree. So both students from both sides would come to that jam session to hang out and play. And at that point, I was looking for a drummer for myself, And again, who played on this record, reached out and was like, "I'd love to play." And I was like, "Okay, let's make it happen." And I think it clicked within the first 1 minute of the song that we played. I'm always worried when I play with someone and they are so awesome. I'm always scared that is this momentum going to be lost outside the bandstand? Are we still going to be friends? But it sounds great on the stage, but it outside the stage also we connected really deeply, and became friends first, So it was just a matter of fact for me to introduce these two guys to each other, and then they connected, because I feel like I had already said that for them, And I feel now they're better friends together than I am with them, which actually comes out in the music. And there's a lot of humor and love for each other, and we share the same styles. And the one of the best things I feel is that making this record, I was kind of the producer and wearing all the hats for it, but these guys took the time to listen to every part and let me know, like, hey, maybe we should do this, maybe we should try that, more as for justice towards the music rather than for them to shine out. And that's something I really look for into a musician, being able to talk outside of music, being able to have a connection in the music, and then being able to provide justice to what we're playing, So that hit all check marks, and to be honest, I'm very excited to have them flying here into Los Angeles in a week from now, or a couple of weeks from now, where I'm playing my release show for the record. So it's awesome, yeah.
Well, let's hear now probably the most recognizable song from the album. This is one that you will all recognize, I think, Blackbird. So this brings us to the part of our show that I know everyone looks forward to every week, the philosophical part of our conversation, and that is an excellent track to bring us into this. It's called New Musical Perspectives. Pritesh, Hopetown is promoted as a quote fresh and deep excursion into the neo-mainstream, clean-toned jazz guitar tradition, end quote. So it's surprising to learn that your musical upbringing was anything but that. You write, quote, my parents both being from north and south of India, we had different influences of music and culture that I was thrown into and was exposed to. But I think by 15, I was kind of musically exhausted by Indian classical music. You can't escape it if you live in it. For me, it was like, wow, what is this band called AC/DC? This is really happening. I would love to start learning these tunes, and I only had dial-up internet. I used to just download a Led Zeppelin song and play it, then show up to my Indian classical class and play that riff on the low two strings of the instrument. And my Indian classical teacher would say, "Ouch!" End quote. Pritesh, what is Indian classical music? Can we hear it in Hopetown? Also, why did your Indian classical music teacher say ouch when you showed off excerpts from Western popular music at your lessons? And would he today be proud of Hopetown?
Um, yeah, this is it's kind of hilarious. Um, this is actually a true story. I did learn Led Zeppelin and showed up and tried to play it, or maybe it was AC/DC or something that I tried to play on my low two strings on the guitar and showed up to my Indian classical lesson and the teacher was like out. He wasn't ouch. He was like ouch, out. And I remember spending, yeah, I remember in school we were given 2 hours or something like that to spend just on music or dance or art. One of these things. I liked art. I was already kind of painting and stuff at home, and I had lessons for that. I could not dance for the life of me. I still cannot. But music was something I was like, okay, I think I can find myself into it. And when I started picking up the guitar, I just could not get into Indian classical music. And I think it was pure exhaustion because being in India, you go to a wedding, um, you go to when someone is born, you go to any big function or any new event happening around you, you will find Indian classical music around you. Not only that, but in movies, you can't escape it. It will be around you. Now there are two things you can do. One is embrace it, which I also do in a way, and the other one is kind of try and find or look for something unknowingly that doesn't sound like that. You know, um, to me it was that I found myself at a place where I was listening to Indian classical music, but it kind of became background music, and it's kind of weird because I feel jazz is background music for people here, sometimes. Because I would play corporate events and play jazz music behind, and people are enjoying their drinks and they're just happy to have jazz happening in the background, which is what Indian music became for me, something that existed in the background. I was happy with its existence in the background, but as something of developing a musical taste around, that wasn't the music I was going towards. It was purely out of exhaustion. So I tried to with my dial-up internet and very slow internet speed in India, try to find whatever I can, and I stumbled across many rock bands, and it kind of dawned on me that hey, there are many ways of playing this instrument. You can bend, you can do all these crazy effects on the instrument and tapping and stuff. I was a young kid. Anything flashy was awesome to me. So I was like, wow, this is cool. And by pausing it every 5 seconds, I learned like the first I have 4 bars of some riff or something, and showed up to my Indian classical lesson. And the teacher was like, I'm not having this. This is not happening. Out. Um, and I remember spending those 2 hours every week or every other week, just hanging outside the room where the lessons used to happen, they were all group lessons. And this is kind of an Indian traditional thing of teaching Indian classical music in a group setting rather than private. That's just how it's done. And I would just sit outside and practice my AC/DC licks and stuff. Eventually, kind of praying my parent, like begging my mom, can I buy a guitar? Please, can we get... I didn't have a guitar yet at home. So I was borrowing from friends. I was borrowing from the school. It didn't have all the strings and stuff like that, you know. But you know, once you think about it, I was a very notorious child in high school. I wanted to do everything but study, which is just not something that you want, that your parents would want. But if today my Indian classical teacher heard this, I think he'd be very proud of it, because I think he would, just the fact that he would see that I was in this small corner of India in New Delhi, and I am here in America making my own record in jazz and trying to establish myself in that music. I think the appreciation as a musician towards each other, I think he would be very proud of that, you know.
And Pritesh, how did you react when you found out that, well, the Beatles actually today are at the head of Western classical music because of their collaborations on Eastern music with Ravi Shankar?
Yeah, it's kind of it's funny because I love the Beatles for why Beatles love Indian music. You know, it's kind of this opposite thing going on. You know, they did their thing and found all this sophistication in Indian classical music. I heard Indian classical music for so long, and I looked up to the Beatles and went, "Wow, this is amazing." You know, which is one of the reasons why I have the song Blackbird on my record, which is a pretty heavy arrangement of the tune, by the way. It's not really, we play Blackbird in and out. We definitely can't play that without having the music in front of us. It's a lot of changes and things going on. And I think, to be honest, one of the reasons is also for other jazz musicians to kind of question me and be like, hey, you have all these jazz tunes, but why do you have Blackbird? And I'm like, I feel like Blackbird, not only Blackbird, but just Beatles tunes they're like the Bach for rock and roll, in my opinion, you know. And some of their music is in the real book. It's there. It's, you know, why do we not call them out in jazz jam sessions? You know, I actually encourage every musician to go up to a bandstand and call out a Beatles tune to play. Whenever I've done that in my life, I've had eyes look at me and go like, are you crazy? Why are we not playing all the things you are, or Autumn Leaves or something, you know? And I'm like, well, Beatles are as jazz as it can be as well, you know? And they have a structure of writing which is kind of like the American songbook form, you know? AABA, you know, different forms of... so I feel very inclined and kind of towards their music, because they think of it in a jazz context. Not only that, they use harmony that is used in jazz. They have 2-5-1s and very cool modal borrowed progressions that are very common in jazz, just not played in a swing and someone singing on it, but it's still as jazz as it can be. So this is my way of like telling other jazz musicians that, hey, go to a jam session, call out a Beatles tune, normalize this, you know. So that's that.
Okay, let's listen to the final track of the evening. This is Thankful. Final question of the evening, Pritesh. What do you wish all of us who listen to this album?
Sorry, what do I wish? What do you mean? Can you describe the question?
Sure. If your Indian classical music teacher is listening to this album tonight, what do you want him to take away?
Um, I think what I would want them to take away is just the genuineness of the music. Each song on this record reflects a part of my life in the past 10 years. Staying home is about me staying home in India. Actually, it was my mother asking me one night when I was visiting back in India, "Are you staying home today or are you going out? Are you going to be at home?" And that hit me very hard because I was like, I don't see my parents too often. I'm always out. I live in America now. My parents live in India. You know, Hopetown is about this small town. There's a song called Low Talks. It's written for the bass. It's about people talking bad things about each other in music and industry. All songs have a meaning. Blackbird has this thing, as I discussed, about let's make it normalize it. So I think each part of the song came up. There was a lot of thought into it, and it exists on the record because it had a meaning in my life. So when people do listen to this, I encourage them to question what that could be, and I'm happy to answer. And I'm putting that out there because it's not that I wrote a tune and now it's on the record. No, it's actually because I had a life experience with something that made me want to write this music, which is why I feel like I'm very pleased with having this out there so I can share a little bit of my story, even so people can ask me why this, and I have an answer for it. So
Well, let's
I
see
guess
then.
that's
Let's see then how
yeah,
we can stay in touch with you. So the website is easy enough, priteshwaliamusic.com. And I'll put that in the chat room in a second. So Pritesh, if we do have questions and want to reach out to you, we can simply click on contact, put in our name, email in the
absolutely.
message, and then you'll respond.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
perfect. Feel free to reach out to Pritesh at priteshwaliamusic.com. And then also we have upcoming concerts. Is that right here? Or we can buy the album, first of all. Here we can
Yes.
listen to it, buy it.
You can listen to it, the snippet of the record as much as we heard. It's some tunes um, and it's gonna be out on November 1st, and on the same day from my website you can also buy um, merch that is gonna be for the record, all the way from tote bags to hoodies, all designed around the Hopetown material. So also a book of transcriptions and lead sheets in case you want to play the music or check out in depth. These are some things that I've done. All of these things will be available on the website from November 1st, on my store.
Perfect. So feel free to reach out to Pritesh. Again, that's priteshwaliamusic.com, where you can find out all the information, ask him any questions, and get the new CD. Thank you so very much to Pritesh Walia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's see what's coming up next week on Vienna Live. And as always, all information about upcoming shows can be found at www.simeonmore.com. You can also sign up for the Friday greeting that I send out, giving people exclusive insights into the upcoming week's upcoming week's shows. That is, just put your email in there and click yes, I want email updates from Vienna Live. So this Wednesday, we have Mauricio Morales, 7 Days. Bassist Mauricio Morales' fourth album presents 7 distinctive compositions for sextet with sophisticated shifts in mood and musical structure. The music teems with intelligence as well as infectious melodic qualities with deft, lush, harmonized lines for front line of trombone, saxophone, and guitar. In a mode of decidedly modern jazz, which also manages to be easy on the ear and heart, the music also benefits from bold, integrated playing and soloing by his young allies from both the East and West Coasts, connections made when the Mexican Morales lived and studied in Boston before settling in his current adopted hometown. of Los Angeles. Come welcome Mauricio to our show. As always, all information, again, about upcoming shows can be found at www.simeonmoro.com. That is, again, next Wednesday, Mauricio Morales, 7 days. Once again, thank you so very much to Pritesh Walia. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors, Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you also to Abby Moser, Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet, and Mary Schlesinger for their support of their shows. Thank you to my cousin Mike and marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, California, goodbye.